welcome to Game Set Matchup, the podcast where we talk everything partnerships, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Hello everyone, I'm Carl Busby, your host of Game Set Matchup, the #1 partnerships podcast, and we are back with another episode. So today I caught up with Erik Schwartz, who is the Chief AI Officer at a company called Tricon Infotech. So Tricon Infotech are in the AI space, and they help to build software products that deliver automated systems to businesses, which in turn help drive revenue and of course increase company value. So Erik has worked in the information retrieval space for most of his career. After coming out of college in the early 90s, sort of the dawn of the internet, he knew he wanted to be involved in that space, building web pages and using those technologies. He started out building digital libraries and did some early digital transformation for governments, universities, research labs. So essentially taking paper documents and making these accessible and online. He's worked at Microsoft and he was involved in the launch of the SharePoint and Office in 2010. Fast forward to the current day, and Erik is now fully involved in the AI space, which we go into much more detail in this podcast. We discuss what a gold style partnership looks like for Tricon in this advancing AI space, and how they are helping businesses to leverage and use the new AI technologies. We also go into a bit more detail of exactly how AI can help businesses in particular sectors. We also discuss what core components are for building a long-lasting partnership with a new business and what foundations you need set in place to give it the best chance of working long-term. As always, remember you can find out more about Findr and how we are helping businesses secure discovery calls with vetted decision makers by hitting the links in the description. Enjoy this week's episode. Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to Game Set Matchup. So this is the podcast where we discuss all things partnerships. Maybe new to the partnerships world, maybe looking for a bit of advice on how to get started, or you could be like an experienced pro, and just looking for a bit of inspirational direction. Very excited today. Please welcome our guests. We've got Erik Schwartz, who is the Chief AI Officer at Tricon Infotech. Hello and welcome, Erik.
Hello, Carl. Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Thank you very much. Absolute pleasure to have you on. So we will start as we normally do. We wouldn't mind just telling our listeners, we can give them a little, just brief introduction, a bit about yourself, a bit about sort of your background, kind of how you've got to your current role, and then also maybe just a bit about Tricon and what they actually do.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. It's a great place to start, Carl. Thanks for setting this up. So yeah, a bit about me. Hi, everyone. My name's Erik. It's great to meet you. And I've been in the information retrieval space for the majority of my career. Came out of university, came out of what we call in America college, back in the early 90s, back at the dawn of the internet, back when things like the Netscape browser hadn't been created yet, before Internet Explorer, before Chrome, before sort of all these modern tools. And the Mosaic browser was the hottest thing on the block.
Oh, wow.
Coming out of university, I didn't know what it was, but I knew I wanted to do that. I wanted to be involved with whatever that was building those web pages. So I got involved, with technology right away, became a webmaster, and started building digital libraries. And digital libraries are really about taking digital documents or paper documents, kind of some of the earliest digital transformation, and making them accessible online so people can look inside those contents and find those things. And we were doing it for governments, we were doing it for research libraries, we were doing it for universities. And some of the demands were really about, hey, we've got to modernize, we've got all those paper documents, and they were physically just out of space. They had to put this stuff somewhere. And so that got me involved sort of early in the mid-90s in the first wave of search engines and search engine products. I worked for search engine vendors for a while. That's when I shifted from technology into product management. Went through a number of acquisitions in the late 2000s. This is when there's a lot of consolidation in the early search engine space, and we ended up getting acquired by Microsoft in 2008. I was at Microsoft for a couple of years, part of the SharePoint team. We launched the 2010 wave of Office. So Office 2010 we launched. I was part of the SharePoint team at the time. And after that, I was on the East Coast and Microsoft was on the West Coast, and I wanted to keep building products. And so then I pivoted my career and started working for larger corporates, where I was running large scale search and discovery platforms for these large corporate organizations. And so 2010, I joined Comcast. I was based in Washington, D.C., and we built a knowledge discovery platform for Comcast that powered all of their consumer-facing video experiences. So every time you picked up a remote control or opened your mobile app or your web app to interface and look for content or look just to see what channel to watch or what was on right now, you hit our big search platform. And we introduced recommendations, and we introduced the editorial control and the ability to sort of place content in the place where users were going to find it. And then in 2018, I took the big leap, literally over the pond, and came over to work for Elsevier in London. That's what brought me to the UK. And it was a similar role. Elsevier, as you may or may not know, is the world's largest publisher of peer-reviewed academic literature. And I came over to build a knowledge discovery platform for them. So we built a search engine. We powered a lot of their academic and government-facing products with a large search engine in the back end. Not quite the scale of Comcast, but still a significant scale. We have tens of millions of users per month. And then most recently, about a year ago, we introduced an AI layer on top of one of their biggest products called Scopus. And it went out to market last summer as Scopus AI. And this is where we really took ChatGPT, we took a large language model, we took an AI, we layered it on top of the application experience, but grounded it in the content underneath. So it wasn't going to make up anything. It was only going to report back what it found inside and create this really nice conversational experience on top of the Scopus product, which had a very rigid and brittle query language. So it brings us up to today. In April of this year, of 2024, I joined Tricon as their Chief AI Officer. So Tricon, a little bit about Tricon. Tricon is a product development company. We're based, 99% of us, or 99.9% are in Bangalore. We build products for our customers and our clients. So I'm glad you brought up partnership, because we have a very outcome-driven partnership model where our customers, our clients, they bring their data and their brand and the desire to drive clear business metrics, and we bring a product team that can help assemble that and get that out there into customers' hands in just a few months. And we're using AI as a way to open the door and help differentiate ourselves from lots of other technology companies that are out there. Saying that, listen, we have a chief AI officer, so we're embracing AI in terms of how we deliver and build experiences and how we'll set you apart. And we're also embracing how we use it to accelerate our own business.
Yep. No, that's amazing. We took a little trip down memory lane there. We just started talking about the early browsers. I'd forgotten about that. And obviously with SharePoint as well. I do remember that when that that first launched. But I said it sounds like again incredible sort of career there. Obviously we do obviously now as the chief sort of AI officer. Just interested, obviously we're going to touch on a few questions in a minute around some more in terms about the partnership side of things. But I guess what sort of what sort of really got you fascinated you with the getting into this kind of sector. I guess obviously with your career, there's a lot of stuff. Maybe it's just sort of happened quite organically, but is there sort of what I guess what sort of driven you to want to go into this sort of this sort of world?
Yeah, Carl, that's a great question. As I mentioned in my introduction, I've been in this information retrieval space for the entirety of my career. Part of this information retrieval space, we've been using all types of machine learning models and machine heuristic models, both predictive as well as heuristic, to help identify and understand language. Right. So that if you think about information retrieval and you think about the problem of a search engine, if you boil it down, you get rid of all the complexity of the technology that lives on there. At the end of the day, we're trying to connect a user who has an intent, right, who has a problem, a question they want to answer, with an answer, with some content that can answer that question. And so that's been the problem space that I've been spending the majority of my career in. And so, back when we were talking about sort of back in the 90s and 2000s, when we were building these sort of large government systems, there was a strong desire to do things like understand people's sentiment, right? Are they happy? Are they sad? Are they angry? I think about the customer support issue. We were doing a lot of work with government agencies, and they were looking for signal in sort of the intelligence, right, and sort of the data that was coming through all their wires. and they're looking for threat detection. They're looking for anomalies. They're looking for keywords. They may have a bank of like known actors, right, in a particular space or a particular domain, and so they're looking to look in this text and see if there's references or nuances or pseudonyms that are being used, right, in these streams of text. And so this involved a lot of compute power back in the day. We would take a lot of time, both when content came in, to really analyze it. And now since November 2022, when ChatGPT really came on the stage and sort of just changed, it blew everyone's mind. These capabilities that we've been building systems around for decades suddenly were just there. Right. Yeah. I can take a dump, I can take a whole bunch of text or a whole bunch of messages. I can literally just drop it in ChatGPT and say, what's going on here? Right. I'm like, oh, well, let me tell you what's going on. Right. And so suddenly the game changed. So the problem hasn't changed. Right. The desire for people to connect a question with an answer, that hasn't changed fundamentally, but the tool set that we have now to do this is extraordinary, and something we like, as search kind of goes through its ups and downs. Search is now white hot in terms of the technology space right now, because of all the things we can now do with these techniques that come out of the AI space.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, obviously I haven't jumped into AI space too much myself. Obviously, I'm sure, like most people out there, probably had a little dabble on ChatGPT to see how it how it works. But I must say, it is fascinating sort of space in terms of, like you said, the fact that you can literally ask it anything and comes back with some really really good stuff. So it just shows again how it's and again this is a free program, so obviously it's going to be sort of getting out there. So one of the things we obviously at Findr was about trying to help businesses talk to one another, creating new partnerships, and I think this lends in quite well to the next question. So obviously AI is quite a new thing. I'd say I think obviously most people are sort of generally aware. I've got some idea of of kind of so what it is, but there's lots of different parts of AI. Obviously you've talked about some obviously bits there already. So with that, with Tricon now, what would you say a sort of gold star partnership looks like right now for you, and talking to another business or a partner to take that conversation sort of forward? How would that look for Tricon?
Yeah, no, thank you for asking that question. So it's a great place to start. And I think the important thing to start out with as we get into this conversation is that AI has driven, at least over the last couple of years, has driven a really different behavior in the C-suite and in the boardroom. Just like you're saying, like I know I got to play with it, I know I got to dabble with it, and I got to try it out. Lots of CEOs, lots of executives, lots of boards are saying, how are we getting AI into our strategy? If we got to figure out how to get AI into our strategy. We got to figure out how to get into our products. We got to figure out. And so you're starting to see, it surface in lots of different applications. So like it's starting to come through in sort of the tools we use on an everyday basis. Microsoft's been doubling down on like Copilot, for example. The CRMs and the business analyst tools and the BI tools rather, and the information tools that we're using on a regular basis. All are starting to expel, or graphics tools, Canva, for example, to create images. They're all starting to create an AI lens into their products. And so there are a number of customers out there and other companies out there that are saying, how does this fit inside of our organization? And sort of driving an abnormal behavior. It's not like the recent sort of technology advances we saw around mobile or cloud, which were really sort of back-end optimizations around how technology teams could deliver products and services. This is now coming top down from the board saying, you got to figure out how to get this into our products. Otherwise, someone's going to come along and disrupt us. And this someone that comes along, it may not be a traditional competitor. It may not be someone we see in our rear view as we're driving forward. It could be a 5-man team that's got a great idea, a niche idea. It's building on AI that can just bypass. So that abnormal pressure is now driving people to say, all right, how does it fit? And so where a lot of companies are doing is they're giving it to their technology teams and saying, hey, Mr. CTO, Mr. CIO, where does this technology going to work for us?
Exactly.
And a lot of technology teams are coming back like saying, this makes things up. It generates information on the fly. Like it doesn't fit like in our transactional banking system, or it doesn't fit in our APIs, where we need to get data out to make sales forecasts, right? However, there are places that it can fit, and that's where we start with Tricon. Right. So first and foremost, as we engage with our clients, we sit down and say, listen, let's do a workshop. Let's understand first and foremost, what are the key business drivers, right, that you want to drive? Yep. Is it revenue? Is it engaging your customers? Is it retaining customers, right? What are the key, is it driving satisfaction, driving CSAT, yep, driving NPS? What are the key business things that you want to drive as an organization? Then we sit down and say, okay, great. Here's where AI can help. And here's where it clearly can't, because it doesn't solve all problems. I think that's right. Yeah. And then the very next step that we do is we take that hypothesis and we load an AI into their environment. So we give them an AI that they can put their own data into. It's a sandbox. It's completely safe. The data's not going to go anywhere. It's not going to go back to OpenAI or Microsoft or any of the big vendors, or Google or Llama or Meta. They're making the models. It's going to stay right there, and then they can see how the AI interacts with their data. And once they see, like, they can actually touch it and feel it and talk to it. Once you sort of pick that thing up, it's like, it's like online shopping. Once you can actually pick it up and hold it in your hand, you're like, oh, I get it. And so then sort of it really crystallizes what we can solve together, and clearly identifies places where maybe it's not working so well. And then what we do is we commit to driving a business outcome in just 90 days. So we take our teams from Bangalore and we laser focus on a deadline to get out, not build another proof of concept, but actually create a product that that they can put into their customer hands and really understand if it's going to work and solve their problems or not.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. I think, like you said, the fact of speaking to a business, actually showing them or giving them ideas exactly how it's going to work, and then them seeing some sort of tangible sort of response to that can make a big difference. People's eyes obviously then open up, and it obviously makes a little bit more sense. That sort of leads a little bit more to the next question, which you might have covered a little bit, but I think a lot of including myself, a lot of listeners who listen right now and thinking that we all know that AI is going to play a big part in people's futures and stuff. But sort of right now, what would you kind of say? I don't have to go into like specifics, contracts or anything, but like, what would you say, businesses are really trying to use AI to leverage, at this present time? There could be people listening right now who are startups, companies, who are really interested in, obviously the current tech. What would you say that, maybe just to say just one example of what they're actually using it to, improve or to try and grow the business?
Yeah, no, I'll give you three actually, and it's and the reason why I love to start our conversations off going back to those early web browsers. We don't remember that early fascination where you sat down on the web and you had to figure out how to download this client and put it into your machine, but you loaded it, got it up and running, and suddenly you're browsing all this information that was out there that's just free and easy and access and easy to use. And the reason why I like to go back to that is because I think it draws a nice parallel with where we are with AI, right? And so we're seeing some very early use cases starting to resonate. ChatGPT, as we mentioned earlier, just came on the scenes, and if you think about it, right, in order to get access to this incredible technology that does these amazing things, I didn't have to buy anything, I didn't have to download anything. I could just start using it immediately, right? So the barrier for entry to get into this technology is incredibly low. That being said, right, where are we seeing some use cases that this is resonating right now, where it's actually driving some change? And so here's three examples that I'll give you. First and foremost, we're seeing a lot of traction in the education space right now. Okay. So e-learning, ed tech. Last quarter we had a great quarter with lots of new clients coming on board in this space, and the use cases are really about taking. These are companies, these are like large publishing companies. These are companies that have lots of content that's been out there and somewhat static. It's recorded and played, but we're finding ways that we can now take this content and reuse it and repurpose it. So, for example, taking a static bit of text and making a video or making a song out of it, right? Because we know that different students have different learning paths and different ways of consuming information. Making it visual. So it's not just reading text, it's creating ways to engage and ask questions. So when you don't have access to your teacher or your educator, you can just ask questions like, what does this really mean? Give me an example. Help me just internalize what this dense text is talking about. And so they're all, creating new ways to interact with the content, creating adaptive learning patterns, adaptive quizzing, making it fun, gamifying it. These are all aspects that we're seeing our clients take on to drive their existing business. So that's one in the e-learning space. Super exciting, and it's just beginning to take off. The second area that we're seeing is what I'm calling the virtual private GPT. And this is sort of the use case where organizations that are very forward-looking are saying, we know our brightest employees are going out and using GPT anyway. Let's bring it inside their organization. Let's make sure we put the right safeguards and the right sort of risk mitigations around it so our data is not leaking out. And then let's even put some of our policy documents or our internal documents inside this thing so our employees can engage with it and start to become a subject matter, start to find valid information within our corpus. So this is an area where we're seeing as well some traction within certain organizations. You're seeing this in the financial services organizations. You're seeing it in a lot of larger organizations that that realize that we can't stop this tide, so we might as well embrace it and make it accessible, but make it safe and understand the limitations of what it can do. So that's the second example. And the third example that we're starting to see some traction of AI is in these sort of very very data-heavy organizations. So the process automation, sort of how to categorize it. But there's lots of businesses, if you think about it, they're still today running on Excel. They take their business, they put the data into Excel, they hand it to somebody else, they take their data out of Excel, they hand it on construction. Friction points, make it flow better, and then start to create learnings from these processes that help drive business value within those organizations. So those are the three examples that we're seeing today, and more will come as we go over the next year.
Wow. Okay. I mean, so I think obviously, explain a lot of detail there for people listening. I think obviously anyone that are in those sort of those sectors, obviously I think that would be very, very sort of informative, and like I said, it just sounds just really obviously exciting. What they're going to be able to obviously do in the future. So just obviously moving back to partnerships just a little bit, obviously in terms of just with your sort of experiences. Obviously a lot of our listeners obviously are working in those fields. Just be interested to get an idea. Obviously, it doesn't necessarily, you've only been at this company for a short while, so it's probably not with this business, but maybe, like I said, in previous business where you've, worked with another partner or another business, and it necessarily hasn't gone the way you thought it may have gone, and then again, is there any sort of learnings that you've kind of taken from that situation which you now put into place for your current company or for the future, so any sort of pitfalls or little things to try and avoid going down that same path?
I think it's you've given me the sort of the classic interview question there. Tell me something about your experience, right? That maybe didn't go so well. How did you mitigate that, right? So but if you think about it, right, if you go back in history and you look back at where projects don't work out, right, and where partnerships don't work out, it comes down to a couple of core elements, right? First and foremost, it's goal alignment, right? Are we all, you think about the rowboat, right? Are we all rowing in the same direction, right? Are we all trying to get to a finish line and getting clarity around that goal alignment? That becomes one of the, for both internal teams as well as technology teams, you sit down in a room and say, we're all good. We're going to make a product and we're going to put it out there and we're going to make lots of money. But what is the goal that we're all going after, right? What is the one thing that drives success? What does good look like? So getting everyone grounded, both internal teams, external teams, cross partnerships on that single goal is the second area where companies continue to struggle, even though we've been talking about digital transformation for decades, is really getting their hands around data and the data that you have. The data that companies have it's gold, right? It's absolutely precious, and it's the key differentiator from them and their competitors and the other segments, right? The data that they have and how they apply it. Companies still struggle to get their heads around data, and so one of the things that we do is we sit down with partnerships is we sit down and say, listen, let's make sure that we have the right data, right? Let's make sure the data is organized in the right way so that it can then drive that impact. And then the third area, right, is trying to take on too much scope, right? Especially as you're introducing new technology. What you don't want to do is you don't want to use the old euphemism. You don't want to boil the ocean. You want to really take on a small chunk, eat that slice of pie, enjoy that slice of pie, right? And then come off and go get the next one. So, getting people aligned on goals, right? To summarize, getting data cleaned up, right? And then, biting off bite-sized chunks that are achievable so you can take milestones towards that measurable goal.
I love that.
Those are again three things that I would start with when we sit down with companies.
Yep, no, that's amazing. I think it makes a lot of sense. Like I said, goal alignment and having the data. Data is always really key for you. If you're not looking at the correct data, or that has not been given to you in the right way, you're not starting off on the best foot. Which so it makes a lot of sense. But yeah, I think that's some really good tips there. And then just finally now coming on to the last question, really. Now, I want to obviously ask a bit about this, but I'm sure many people listening might want to ask as well. So, you are in a sort of perfect place to sort of give us an idea about what you think the sort of future holds for, obviously AI and the future sort of like partnerships and how that's going to work, with other companies and businesses. So just be intrigued to get your kind of idea what you think. Obviously we're already, I guess, might as well quite advanced stage now, but we're obviously just at the beginning. So in the next sort of 3 to 5 years, you said, what do you sort of see as sort of the sort of major changes that will for AI and companies? And then I guess obviously probably what a lot of people listening to, and I'm sure you probably had the question asked you many yourself, is it going to replace people eventually, or are we all going to be able to work, in harmony together, with creating new roles, new jobs, that kind of stuff? Be very interested to get your take on that.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, Carl, every time I sit down and use an AI, I always make sure that I'm super polite and thank it for its help, because at some point when I have to respond to my AI. Oh, I'm just kidding. I think it's super important to figure out where these tools sit in the grand scheme of things. So from my perspective, right? Yeah. Here's where I see it going. There's a whole lot of interest and a whole lot of investment. Actually, before I make this point, there's a second caveat I want to make. And the second caveat is we've all, growing up in technology, we're all a member of Moore's Law, right? Which was this notion that, it was really talking about CPUs and the fact that the number of transistors we're going to pack onto a CPU was going to double in size every 18 months. And that continued, right? And this is, Gordon Moore came out of Intel and it continued, and it still continues at a pace because we sort of pack more and more denser. So there's some sort of corollary, I think, and I haven't kind of come up with it, but it's almost inverse of Moore's Law, because every prediction that I make around AI, it seems to be about twice as long as what it actually seems to be taking. Maybe it's Schwartz's Law. Well, maybe you can run with that and we can go from there. But if I say 3 to 5 years, it seems like it's 1 to 2 years before these things actually happen, just because the pace of innovation is happening so quickly. But first and foremost, what we're seeing is this whole notion of agents, and what some people are calling agentic behavior. And I'm super excited about it in a number of ways, because one of the things that agents allows us to do is, instead of having these sort of large gargantuan models like ChatGPT, which is sort of this all-consuming and knows everything about everything, we've shoveled all of the information of the internet into this model. What agents are going to allow us to do is agents are going to allow us to build these much smaller, much nimbler models into our local repositories of information. So they become effectively subject matter experts inside the organization, right? So we can have an agent that's really deep on, let's say, our HR policy documents, and so it knows how that content's written, it knows what it's about, and I can go and ask that agent anytime, hey, is this in my policy? Or if I take this this gift, this is what we see in larger organizations. If I get this gift in this location, do I have to report it, right? Or what are or someone invited me to dinner? Is this legal? Can I do this? Can I accept it? Right. So all those sort of questions that happen inside the organization that HR just can't seem to catch up with, and no one can seem to find the documents. Right. So one example. But then it'll be it'll understand your customers, it'll understand your sales forecast, it'll understand your finances, it'll understand your credit history, so all these little pockets of information. It'll understand the data that you have around the products that you build. So those become little agents, right? That are highly intelligent, and they become kind of tightly coupled with that data set. And then the second piece of this architecture is there'll be a larger piece. It'll be more of a generic, like a coordinating piece that is able to create plans, and it's going to be aware of all these agents that are down there that know these details, and say, an executive will come up and say, well, how's Q4 looking in the U.S., right, in North America, and it'll allow executives to ask sort of open-ended, sort of non-specific questions, and it'll go off and create a plan and say, okay, here's the agents, here's the subject matter experts I need to go ask to get this information back. I'll gather all that data together. I'll pull it back together, up a charts and information and data together in a story, and I'll give that back to the executive. And then instead of an analyst having to run away for 3 weeks and prepare for the next, next big meeting, an executive have an answer to that question in just minutes. And so think about the productivity speed, right? That enables. So that's I think where we're going to see a lot of investment over the next 3 to 5 years. Assistants are coming, right? Number two, assistants are absolutely coming. Siri was, it was interesting, but listen, let's be honest. The only thing I use Siri for nowadays is to set a timer on my watch.
I was going to say.
I mean, it works really well at that. And it's kind of cumbersome for some reason. It's a cumbersome thing to do. Siri, set a 10-minute timer, and it just does it. Aside from that, it doesn't really, I can't say, hey, get me to work. I can't say, is my train on time? What's the weather going to be tomorrow? Like, it's sort of all these sort of things that you want to, do I have enough time to get a run in before my next meeting? Do I have enough time to take a walk or get some exercise, or how should I plan this presentation that I work? Like, it's sort of all these things the work that we need to do, things that fill up our heads. And so we'll have these assistants that'll be really helpful and help us do this. And the third thing, right, just to kind of round out this point, is we're seeing vision-based and AI-based robotics are taking off at laser pace. We're seeing this in the manufacturing. We're seeing this in the supply chain space. Tesla, with their cars on the road, are really starting to give an example of these autonomous vehicles that are traveling around by themselves with very little human interaction, running on AI models. And so those are the kind of the three sort of big things that are really coming in the short term. To answer your question, listen, is your job in jeopardy? Well, here's the way I like to answer that question, right? If you're not using AI on a regular basis, the guy or the gal next to you who is using it is gonna move ahead of you. So people are gonna find ways to use it strategically inside of their jobs, inside their organizations, to get ahead. They're going to use it for a strategy plan. They're going to use it for brainstorming. They're going to use it for challenging themselves, giving new ways to look at problems. Really, it's like having a really smart group of like Oxford interns at your beck and call, but you have to tell it what you want, right? You have to tell it like what you want to go do. So if you don't start using that as a tool, as an assistant, I mean, your lifespan is going to not your lifespan, but your longevity in the work lifespan. Yeah, not lifespan, right? Let's have your help. Like, let's not get into there. I think we'll become limited, but for those of us that can adapt and figure out how to use these tools, and you don't have to use them 24/7, but start to incorporate them. Write a better email. That call row was fantastic. And you give it you write up the email, write up a couple of bullet points, and I do this all the time. I'll stick it into ChatGPT and say, just write this a bit better for me. Because in my head it's clear, but sometimes the AI can sort of read it and write it in a way that's more consumable for multiple audiences, and so that's really helpful. And it just gets your point across much clearer. That's
what I mean. It's obviously so much there to kind of to take in and digest. Obviously, I think I've never heard of it described before. You said when you mentioned about having the little assistants, the different things which are they focus on something specific, and that makes a lot of sense. I mean, being able to
agents, think about them as agents or subject matter experts, right?
Yeah.
Think about like a large corporate organization. The model exists, right? But you can spend 2 weeks trying to find that one person and getting on their diary, right, to have a conversation about something. That's it's 2 weeks of time wasted when I could have just been asking questions.
Yeah. No, absolutely. But yeah, like I said, I think there's a lot to take in there. Like I said, I mean, I think I'm just, to be honest with me, I'm absolutely fascinated with it. At the same time, probably just a tiny little bit, scared of it. But I think that's probably everybody, just because it's a bit of the unknown sort of thing, and that's what I think a lot of businesses are sort of working with. But it sounds like all businesses have to embrace it, and at some point bring in have somebody who's working obviously in that field, exactly like what you're obviously doing now, sort of thing. So
I think that's a great point, Carl. A lot of progressive business owners really are embracing it, and you're seeing it in all sort of aspects. You're seeing, I have a close friend who he works in an area of construction. He's been doing this for 25 years, and he's got all these physical plans for assembling and putting things together. And he's got this vision where he said, I can imagine someone coming in and saying, hey, I have a weekend project. I want to scale this down and do something with my kids. And I could spit out some plans for him and tell him what wood and what materials he needs to buy, and could even send the plans into a router to cut the wood out for it. So it could this sort of this hobbyist, so we can start to apply these things as a simple way, right, for us to start to engage with really complex things behind the scenes, and that's an enabler for business.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think, like I said, just it's a key thing. I think this business has got to look at it as a way of like I said, how is it going to obviously benefit, rather than looking at it from a point of view of obviously it's a bad thing,
right? And that use case, right, it's not going to actually run the cutting routine in the router, right? It's not going to change how the saw cuts through the wood. That's going to be still controlled by precise mechanics and precise software that run that machinery. However, the ability to kind of load a plan into that and dynamically, and sort of say, like me, who's I know nothing about how do I load how do I work with those machines, to enable that for anybody that's what AI will enable.
Yeah. No, it's amazing. Listen, we've also just come to the end now. Obviously, we've obviously time. We could obviously talk for much longer on all the subject. But I mean, I've personally just found it fascinating. I've learned a little thing or two. And like I said, we really appreciate you coming on and talking to us about everything to AI and partnerships. So thank you very much for coming on, Erik.
Carl, it's my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me on, and have a great day.
Yeah, we'll catch up soon.
Take care.
Thanks for joining this week's Game Set Matchup. Tune in to hear more about the need to knows and the do's and don'ts when it comes to creating successful business partnerships.